Hey, everybody. It is day 23, which is Tuesday, May 17th. And Kelly, did you notice yesterday when I posted yesterday's conversation that was the second anniversary of starting these 2020?
I saw that you posted that, but I didn't realize it. I mean, it's crazy. 2 years, we
Yeah.
started these when the pandemic hit and we were all hunkered down as a way of maintaining connections with the profession and with teachers and a way of maintaining
Yeah.
some mental health, I think was very helpful for us. But here we are 80 something of them later.
I know that was 82 yesterday. And I think about how many people we've interviewed, how many conversations to me that were just so helpful with my own thinking. There are so many smart people who've been on and so many others that we've requested, and they couldn't do it or didn't want to, who knows?
So today we don't have smart people. We just have us.
Yeah, sorry,
And
you can turn off now.
And we came up with this idea that, we were thinking back, when the pandemic started, but we were even thinking back, like when we started working together and writing 180 Days, that as a companion to that book, there's a lot of video. And there's video that some of it, I don't know that I've ever seen. And some of it we haven't watched in a long, long time. So here was our idea for today. We have randomly selected a video of a kid in Penny's 9th grade class. This was in the 2015-16 school year. And it's a 3.5-minute conference. We have not previewed it. I have really no idea what's going to be said in it, but we just thought we would show it and just sort of kind of metacognitively, since we're removed from it now, just kind of share our thinking about the conference and how it went. And I don't know, if post-pandemic, would we do something different?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of good thinking. I was also, for context, it's May. This was the last time Heinemann was visiting our classes. And if you can remember, like if I share my screen right now and you can see this picture, do you remember I was set up in one part of the classroom and you were set up in the opposite, and we had film crews in both spots. So there was this background constant noise that was to me louder than usual for conferencing, but it was also my students were completing a multi-genre project, these 9th graders, that's in 180 days, where we asked them to come up with a big idea and then use different genres to show us that idea. This is a kid who has written several things that were, I think, really strong, but he's not a very confident writer. Can't you even see it in this image as we sit down? So I'll be really curious. Please tell me if you want to stop, if you see something you want to think about.
Okay, so again, this is a video I don't know that I've ever seen, and we're doing this in real time. This is not rehearsed.
Okay, and it starts right away with this question because he said to me he doesn't know what he wants to write.
No, I kind of want to do something on fishing because I really like fishing.
So tell me some things about that.
Like fishing?
Like, what are you interested in? When you try to get your hands around a topic like fishing, you want to think of
Outdoors and sports and stuff.
definitely can be part of the outdoors and sports, but what I like to think of is my topic is my friend Dawn, but the idea is what's going to make the writing work. And the idea is that I want people to understand how hard it was to write an eulogy for my best friend, but I want to bring in all of the joy of that relationship. So I have an idea about what I want to say. And that's different than just like telling about it. And so if you have a topic, fishing, what's something that you want other people to know about fishing? That would be an idea.
So if you stop it just for a moment,
Equipment one.
I mean, this is a common problem, right? With middle school and high school writers, is their topics are too big, right? They're too big. I want to talk about the New England Patriots, or I want to talk about fishing, or I want to talk about, and it's always kind of a difficult thing to try to get. And I love where you're going with it, because at first he said fishing, and then when you tried to get him to narrow a little bit, then he went outdoors, and then you brought him back to fishing again. So like, what do you think about, and trying to find that smaller moment or topic? I mean, you could write 5,000 books on fishing. We're just asking the kid to write one paper, right? Or multi-genre paper.
Yeah, I think that I think that's actually not at all what I'm thinking about it too, which is so interesting to me to think about it now through the lens you just gave it. Because what I heard was not that fishing is too big, but that he has no idea what he wants to say about fishing. That it's, to him, it's a topic, like my sister could be a topic, but it's not a subject. There's no idea. And I'm trying to, you know how that the conference architecture that I learned from Lucy Calkins was, research, figure out. And when he says, I don't know, fishing, and I'm like, oh, so say more. And he goes, well, he doesn't really know. So I'm like, oh, he needs to understand what a subject is, but now I'm not sure that's what he needs. It's very interesting.
I think it's the same lens. I mean,
Mm,
I think, okay, what about fishing do you want to write about?
mhm.
Is something, under the umbrella of fishing.
Yeah, that's true. It probably is. All right, let's see what else he says.
Like, what you need for it,
Okay.
the places where you go.
What else?
I'm not really sure. It's not like a lot of stuff.
Do you have particular fish you like to catch?
Mm.
No.
All of a sudden I have this vision of Sam's trout fishing guide that would include the places where the best fishing is. So it's almost like this becomes an informational piece for readers, that gives them information, but perhaps might also have a little story.
Yeah, like my story. of me
I don't
fishing.
know. I mean, I'm
Maybe.
just guessing, like, I think about,
Okay. I love that, like he throws something out to see if he can get your approval.
I know.
And
I
then you
know.
say, well, I don't know. That's kind of up to you to decide. I like how you said, well, what about a particular fish? In that moment, I was also thinking about a particular moment fishing. Like, was it with your dad when you were 8 years old, or when, or, is there a memorable moment fishing that you'll never forget?
Isn't
You know,
it that, the thing here, Kelly, is how much do we lead and how much do we, because our whole new book on decision making, you can feel me trying not to lead too much and trying not to make decisions. But then I could hear it with, well, I could almost see Sam's informational guide. Like I'm trying to throw out, we've been studying mentor texts that are multi-genre projects, and you could see all these options. He doesn't have any of those options in his head, right? But
I think that's a really important point. I know you and I have shown many, many times, we're not going to show it today, the conference I did with Peter, in which I wasn't comfortable enough with the silence that I tried to leave it open-ended with him. And finally, at an exasperation, I did really bad teaching where I said, well, maybe you could try A or B or C or D. And that is such a temptation when you're sitting with a kid and the kid is not really generating a direction with the paper. And I don't know if you remember this, but you called me a couple of days later and you said he came up with a bunch of good ideas. None of them were mine.
That's right.
But that giving him those, you might try A, B, or C, got him to think about D, E, or F. And so was that a bad thing or was that a good thing? Was that not, would he have come up with it on his own if I'd have just said, hey, and I think I saw you do this move once, okay, well, go back to your seat and think about it and I'll come back to you in 10 minutes. That we don't just immediately feel like we have to intervene when the idea doesn't come right away.
And I think I'm particularly bothered by where I stopped this video and the vampire look I have. No, just kidding. More that it's May and I wanted my students independent now. Do you know what I mean? Like after a year in my classroom, why are we here? But so often that's the wrong expectation because a kid who's been writing well can still be kind of stuck on a project. Like, what do I do?
Well, and what do we talk about in our new book, that the kids who come to you in grade 13 are still struggling with, like, how do I come up with a topic? How do I structure it? Where's the formula? Where's the rubric?
Well, and what if It's just the work. What if we stop trying to say that a kid should be here by X and simply say that this is what the work is? All right, so let's watch a little bit more. The one breath. Okay, there's a lot of information that Mr. Gallagher is looking at, but it's also a story of a diver who died. And so it feels like that then gives it it's more purpose, or it engages me as a reader. Yeah, kind of. I mean, you started by saying, I love fishing.
Yeah.
And I want to know the love of fishing in this piece.
So I think that this is fascinating in that I think kids have been conditioned so much that an informational piece can't have them in it, right? That they have to be separated from the topic. And I sense this is a little bit what he's wrestling with here. Like he might want to present some sort of information about fishing, but then he's like, well, wait a minute, can I be in the story? Right?
Yeah.
Or not story, but in the multi-genre piece. And I think that's a conditioning of sort of this artificial separation of discourse that schools, and I've done it myself, my own books have foisted upon kids that, you know, there's this kind of, you know, there's informational writing, there's narrative writing, there's argument writing, and they're all separate and never can they cross. And I think that's one of the values of multi-genre is it encourages kids to experiment with mixing and matching. And I notice he seems kind of confused about that.
For sure. I mean, and I'm looking over his head at the quote that's on the board behind him that says, more meaningful, more human, really, than our efforts to tell each other the story of our lives. You know, what could be more meaningful or more human of what it's like to be who we are, to think the things we think, to live the lives we live. He doesn't know that, right? It's really his experience. So a little bit more.
Just catching fish, seeing how it feels catching them, bringing them in. It's a cool feeling how right when they bite the rod, it goes down.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I'm a big fisherman. You didn't know that.
I like freshwater fishing a little bit more too.
You do?
Yeah, I've kind of done it a little bit more, so I'm kind of like used to it more. But I mean, saltwater fishing is pretty fun. I did it this past. I went to Florida.
No, I would say that it's a very subtle thing, but when you say I am a fisherman as well, this gets to that idea that I think for a writing class to really prosper, there has to be a trust, a warmth, a connection that is not just English teachers saying, hey, your comma's in the wrong place, or you know, you should have this in your introduction. I just think it is a subtle but bigger thing that's important in a writing classroom.
I also love how, do you hear the shift when he says, well, that feeling really, when the rod bends down and you've hooked, like you can tell he's got something that's information story driven, right? It's almost like a really nice combination, but you can feel the energy. Do you remember that quote from the College Composition Journal that said kids need to feel emotional and intellectual cues that tell them it's time to write? I feel like that was an emotional cue, and Sam is going, wait, I can write about this, which is part of why I'm seizing it. And the other thing I would say about this is we learned so much about kids in this couple 2-3 minutes with them.
Excuse the pun, but it may be his hook into the paper. Sorry.
That was really fun. We tried shark fishing and didn't catch one though.
So maybe it becomes Sam's shark fishing guide instead of trout. I don't know. Nah, you're expert.
I don't know.
Okay, so to get started today, if I were you. Okay, just gonna say, this is so typical. We're at 3:09 and I know this isn't even a 4-minute conference, but so often about now, I can feel I need to get this kid back to writing so I can get to the next kid. And sometimes I know I'm wrong about that, like I'm rushing a kid, but I'm always trying to think of, okay, today, get back to writing. And I learned that phrase from Lucy's work. today and every day when you go to write, think about this. She used to have this constant refrain of this is something that's bigger than this conference. And I learned this need to go, okay, today when I want you to work on, and you hear that, I think a lot. And when I'm conferring with kids, today I want you to go try this.
I think the value in that too is that it almost ensures, you're not going to talk about 9 things and then say to the kid, okay,
Right.
go practice, which will drown the kid by the time he gets back to his desk,
Right.
or by the time you leave. 1 thing, 2 things in and out. I think it's fascinating that, again, the conversation led him to an unexpected place. So he started with trout, and then all of a sudden the actual act of discussing it led him to sharks. And now he's got something to think about. Maybe it's both, maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
like the idea too of, of in and out in 3 minutes or so.
Mhm. I would be thinking about this moment of catching a fish that you talked about. And I would be thinking about your most recent trip to Florida because the details are fresh in your mind. And I would just try to write a moment of catching a fish.
Okay.
And then we can think about the
Oh, yeah.
other parts.
Okay.
Does it go along? Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Go right. Look forward.
Now, that's interesting decision. And I've made the same decision too. It's not a criticism, but it's interesting to me when you said, I would be thinking about, because it gets to that dilemma that we always talk about. How much of a nudge is it? Is it too much? Is it not enough?
I know.
Is it, and you obviously know things about writing that the kid doesn't know, right? And so to completely deny the kid and just say, go make your own decisions, I think is not realistic as well. So it's that, what's that balance of enough of a nudge that he will take ownership and go make some of those decisions.
Yeah, but I think I take the opposite view. It's almost like you're giving me an out that I don't think I deserve. I think that what I'm doing is giving him work to get him going so I can get to another kid. And it will take longer for me to say, so what do you think you want to start with? And to have to kind of, okay, why don't you get, you know what I mean? Like I've done 3.5 minutes and I'm like, okay, that's the time I've got. I got to get to another kid. So I'm rushing. This is what I would do. I want you to get to a moment and go and write that moment. And yeah, he's enthusiastic about that because I've told him what to do. But I think it's almost contrary to what I really believe is the right move. I just am stuck by the conditions of my room, which is too many kids to get to. There are other kids who don't know how to start.
Yeah. And let's be honest. And we've said this before, that there's a lot of kids you'll never get to. In my class, I had 38 freshmen. So how long, 4 minutes a piece is it going to take me to get to 38 freshmen? So you're right. You have to make those decisions in real time based on the conditions of your classroom.
Well, it would take you 10 days, right? Because if you did 3 minutes. And I think that, we talk a lot in the book about trying to give them about 20 minutes to work on a project once we've gotten into it, right? Text study takes up more time at the start, but once you're in and you want to give them about 20, 25 minutes to write, well, that condition has certainly changed with the long shutdown. Because I hear from more and more teachers that the attention span and the willingness to sit and struggle and the stamina is so low now. And what would that look like? This fall, my students, I would say it was more like 20 minutes was about the extent of how much time they had to work on their own. And what was longer this fall was notebook time, because they were so engaged with quick writing, revising, and sharing that I kept that piece and it got longer. It's so interesting the way you read a class and what do they need right now. But I do wonder, that conference depends on the other kids continuing to work. And do you remember when we talked to Matt Glover about, you have to teach that. Today, you guys, I'm going to try to do one conference and you're going to all stay, and you're not going to need me. Even little kids can do this.
I also think you need to teach the idea of building your capacity to write for 20 minutes. Like, I think you need to make that visible and be honest. Like, I know some of you have trouble. I sometimes have trouble writing for 20 minutes. And so, maybe just consciously see how long you can go. And, tomorrow you go an extra minute. So part of this is not just producing a paper, but part of this is, especially post-pandemic, is to reestablish your identity and your momentum as a writer, because that went away for a lot of kids.
Well, and I was already struggling this when I left the high school, but what I say to my students is the easiest way for you to block yourself as a writer is to let your screen get filled with distractions. So you're working on your playlist you're going to listen to while you write, and you have to check the score on the Patriots last night, and pretty soon you got 6 tabs open and a chat going here and your phone's going, and you're not getting anything done. And to really focus students on, if we're doing important work, which you try to establish that this working on telling your ideas and information is important, then we have to set up conditions where we defy our constant need for distraction and validation. That's
I think
hard.
you're right. Distraction addiction. This morning I wrote, and I take my phone, I turn it off, I put it upside down, I close the door, I close all my tabs,
Mhm.
because if I have anything open, things pop up on my screen. It's just
Sure.
not conducive to.
It's
So I
just
guess
a temptation. You're like,
But
I
I
don't really
guess-
want to write anyway.
I guess the point of all that, though, is that actually is a writing strategy, and that's actually something that needs to be taught to kids.
That's what I think the notebook writing does, though. My students learn they can stay focused. They can want to keep going, especially if we write a couple and then you go back and find one you want to write longer on. And I'll look at the room, and if I've got almost everybody engaged, I'll let it go a couple more minutes. And I'll say to them, you guys just wrote for 8 minutes, right? That was a big chunk. And I just building that, it's like, just like you said, a little bit more, getting them to the point, because if conferring, and I believe it is the heart of workshop, right? As I say to teachers, you're never going to get where you want to go if you can't make conferring work in your room. Then we've got to figure out, even in today's conditions, how to do that.
And here we are with 312 years of teaching experience between us.
300
And
for
we're-
you.
And we're still like looking at that, looking at our craft going, I might have done this differently. I'm wondering if that. I mean, the best teachers I have ever met are reflective teachers. And so I actually kind of enjoyed today's exercise. Maybe we'll do another one of these. And I would say, Penny, before we leave, if that place where you froze it and you had that vampire face wasn't nearly as bad. as
Wait.
this one.
Turn that cup
As
around so
this
they see
one.
you as
So
well.
I just want to know that that's a distraction I have to turn away from me, because it horrifies me every day.
Okay, I'm bringing my mug next time.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, see you guys later.
All right. Bye, everybody.